All right. Let's start with question one of the group video forum on Google. So what strategies does Google need to follow and to maintain and expand its leadership in search and ads?
Um, so
Jacob?
I, yeah, so I think I took maybe a different approach than maybe some other people. Um, I feel like they really need to optimize their internal processes. I know they mentioned in the article that several times they're changing things 3 to 5 times a week. And, when you're bouncing ideas that often, um, you could, experience some sort of like change fatigue or something along those lines. And then there's an unclear idea of what the goal is at the end when you're constantly changing like that. So if you don't have a clear line of sight of what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to get there, it makes it very difficult. And then they mentioned that they had high turnover rates with the agencies that they worked with. So, if they're struggling to meet their current goals simply because they can't accomplish them, it's kind of hard to look further down into the future, because they might experience the same issues if they don't clean up what's going on inside. So I think they really need to focus um, on some of those things that they had talked about. I think one of the things was like uh, wave breaker and test bay, and kind of implementing those and developing like fully baked ideas and processes and how they're going to get there before they start investing money and time into whatever their next venture is going to be.
Yeah, that sounds definitely like the path that they should take. I think for me, I looked at it as Google needing to continue to create value for their customers and to really focus on like the search and the data that they're maybe missing out on, especially like now where TikTok and other platforms are becoming the place where people go to search for where to go on vacation, where to go to eat. They're not going to Google anymore. They go to see what other consumers like them are promoting. So how are they accessing that data and using those other platforms or creating something similar to be able to extract that data and put that back into their systems? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that like Google being such a big data company that and a lot of tech companies in general are finding ways to integrate their ways like into your life. Um, and I did see someone talk about like wearable technology, but that's just something that, just another way where they can integrate into your daily life. And like you said with TikTok, people are going there. Um, yeah, so I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Mhm. Cool. Are you guys ready to move on to the next one?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, question two. To what extent will Google continue to grow its ads business versus expanding into new business areas?
Okay, so I'll take that one. So starting with how much they'll continue to grow, based on the article, it looks like so the Sales Acceleration and Innovation Labs, was eventually sunset back in 2021, and the GMB and GLS platforms were absorbed by other programs. That test bay was used best to adapt Google Ads products and strategies to enable the emerging YouTube segment that was going on, kind of at the beginning and through COVID. But it looks like they plan on growing and expanding LSA, which is the local services ads, which came a little bit after GMB, and it's essentially GLS rebranded. And this was in 2023. And they noted that it's already in 76 verticals and is was growing quite a bit at the end of 2022 already. So LSA had become their shining star. I'm assuming shining star, they're kind of referring to the like that BCG matrix, kind of, I guess, like marketing Foursquare model. And this was in Google Ads, and it is seems to be a really strategic importance to their leadership. So overall, it seems like the ads business is going to continue to grow. Seems like a pretty bread and butter part of their business, amongst the other things that they're getting into, but definitely not going to be stifling their ads business to go in other directions. The article didn't seem to imply that. But it did seem that the article was implying that heavy focus on research and development and the funding there for the development of ideas around ads, so on and so forth, it definitely shifted away from that a bit since the pandemic. That's it for me.
Any
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I think made some great points there. We will dive a little bit into thoughts on the revenue growth approach to piggyback off of these ideas, which was really great. I loved how you mentioned the LAS or the LSA. What was it standing for? The local services ads functionality. Love that. I think that is definitely a place that they were kind of trying to figure out what was worth expanding into research and development and what was worth trying to reduce costs and try to figure out what's going to provide the data to show that true exponential growth with their current services. So think great points with that. Loved how you mentioned the COVID kind of changing the mindset a little bit, and I think we can definitely discuss a little bit more on their paths moving forward, and if that's going back into the R&D of local service ads and trying to kind of enhance those products, if that's going to be worth it, or if it's worth it to be more stringent on what they're doing with their money. But great points, Josh. Thought that was wonderful.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I agree. I think you kind of had to infer a lot from this article.
Yes.
So.
Agreed. Okay, next question is, what new revenue generation approaches should Google pursue?
Yeah, so for me, there were a lot of different ways that I kind of looked at it, struggled through it a little bit, honestly. But for myself, I think that, like Josh said, they really kind of changed their mindset during COVID from trying to move away from local service ads and research and development and try to find more I guess, work and products that would actually provide real data that proves that it's, bringing in revenue and whatnot. So for me, I think the biggest thing that they can do with just generating new revenue approaches is to continue to try and walk that tightrope of, we're going to invest money in research and development and trying to improve some of our current product lines and expand those horizons, while also putting our money towards integrating and improving our current products that we know are going to bring money in. So I think improving the LSA local services ads functionality in order to expand on what's being offered to customers is a huge way that they can continue to kind of work in the research and development realm of that without necessarily trying to take on too much. They already have a well-established, kind of service and structure with the LSA ad line, and it would be rather easy to kind of, I think, expand into the research and development. We see it a lot being utilized today in the modern world, or starting to be utilized. Google is already on the forefront of that, integrating AI technology within their services, especially with their local service ads functionality, providing users with enhancements with products that they're already familiar with, should help generate revenue in the long run, reduce their costs overall, and and as well, providing informational videos to new users for how to use these functionalities, I think would be an easy way to gain new customers into Google product lines that may not be fully aware of some of the uses. That way we can generate new customers, familiarize them easily with our products and services, and how to use it. And additionally, I think that with that being said, they do still need to focus on some of the aspects of things that aren't so off in the distance. It is still playing a fine line between research and development and sticking to what you know. So I do think that it is still kind of tiptoeing that, but I think they shouldn't drive away completely from R&D, LSA services, those kinds of things. But that's my thoughts on how they could potentially drive revenue up in the future.
I guess you have a good point with that informational video part. Is that like, did you come up with that, I guess, because of the case they were spending a lot of time and resources like doing like individual, like one-on-one like training, and that's super costly like in the long run? If they had just invested more time and like guides and videos and be like, hey, go here, and if you have questions, then reach out to us, versus like setting up those one-on-one channels. Is that kind of,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so great question. It was kind of a mixture of that. That was the main kicking point for me to be like, okay, I think that would be a way for them to really just streamline their communicational practices, possibly reduce the need for management oversight on things like that, because that was a huge thing that they were having to do and make a lot of changes on the fly with things. But also just for myself, like I am not very good with technology in when it comes to learning brand new technology ideas, whether it's like apps or computer functions, Excel. So that for me at least, I'm just thinking of it from a practical perspective. That's something that I would, if I had a small business, I would be incredibly interested in, utilizing all these new technologies and services. But just not knowing how to do it and the time that it's going to spend to familiarize myself with the processes that are already established, it's just not worth it. But if they could provide that little bit of easy insight and accessibility to customers, I think they could bring in a huge number of new customers to a variety of different Google services, whether it be through ads or like a no, or they could expand into healthcare potentially. That's a realm that they aren't in. That's something that they could potentially expand into if they wanted to expand their product lines into a different kind of service industry. I think that could be potentially easy if they really just bring up their current product lines. But yeah, so that was kind of my thinking on both of it. A little bit of practical, just like I'm not very good at technology, but also driven from the struggles they were having in the article.
And that's a good point, because I think people learn at different rates. And so if you're having a one-on-one session and you're being kind of like walk through things, if you don't get something, you don't want to be like, actually, I don't understand this, let's pause. You can learn at your own rate, rewind the video, figure it out. So yeah, great points. Okay, let's move on to the last question. So how can Google use its extensive data and predictive models in new and different ways?
Okay. Yeah. So for the purposes of this question, I was kind of just thinking outside the box, obviously outside the scope of the actual article, and was just kind of thinking about some existing technologies that Google has, as well as maybe some other things that I've heard that they're developing. A couple things came to mind. Mainly, I was thinking like they have like Google, Buds, like the little earbuds and the little Google Home like speakers that you can put in your car or your house or whatever. I was thinking you could potentially maybe utilize some of their like data and modeling and stuff to maybe have real time like language translation using those devices. I think that'd be something really cool. I don't think there's anything existing on the market that does something like that, but that's certainly something that could be that there'd be a huge market for down the road, as well as like personalized ads in radio, TV, and streaming. I think in streaming there maybe is, to an extent, maybe some personalized ads you get maybe on Spotify or Pandora or whatever, but at least on radio or on TV there isn't. So if you could utilize, people's trends and things like that, and they could jump into that ad space and basically send people customized ads based off of their search history and things that they've been looking at online, I think that would also be a huge game changer in the whole advertisement space. I also thought of Google Glass, which is like those Google glasses that basically allows people to do augmented reality type of things. I think there was all kinds of bad publicity around those like 10 years ago or so when they launched. I think some companies were using them for like inventory tracking purposes and some other things, but the whole virtual reality, augmented reality space, that's something as well that Google could, utilize all of their models and huge data warehouse to kind of make something fun and intuitive, for the purposes of businesses as well as for the purposes of people just having fun and doing customized things. Another thing, that I like what that Matt mentioned was the healthcare industry. Obviously, I work in the healthcare industry, so obviously there's all kinds of possibilities that they could use, different data models or AI to assist with R&D on different, new drugs, or tracking disease spread and doing those kind of things. I really think when it comes to this, answering this question, I think kind of the possibilities are really endless, and it just kind of just comes down to, hey, what industries and what kind of products does Google feel comfortable designing? Because really, I mean, honestly, with the amount of data and as well as with AI, that the AI tools that they're developing, they can pretty much do anything they want.
Yeah.
I would
I-
love those Google Buds if they were like, real time translating for you.
Mhm.
When I went to Japan, like there are certain areas where people really don't speak English and you're like, oh shit, like I have to like figure out how to communicate. And so I would use like Google Translate as best as I could, and then like back and forth, like show each other. And so like just that audio piece of it would be so cool,
Yeah, it would be awesome for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Also, to kind of tie into that, growing up as a kid, I used to go to, like a lot of like Asian markets, small mom and pop Asian markets where a lot of the products were just all, imported Korean products or Japanese products. So I couldn't read any of the labels or anything like that. And so I think, if Google could use some kind of technology where you could whip out your phone camera and like look over the product and it could translate the label in real time and you could actually see like what it is and it from Japanese to English. I always thought, like, I was like, dang, that would be a really helpful thing if you were traveling overseas or something too, or doing international travel or had to live somewhere for business for a little bit, where you're not native to the language, enhancing your just abilities to communicate, buy things as a consumer. So I do think that there's huge benefits that Google can really take advantage of in trying to utilize their technology and communicating and trying to make it easier for different languages to interact and cultures to kind of communicate with one another. So that's always been very interesting. I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of that one point. Sorry.
Well, Matt, I think I think that already exists in their
Yeah.
Google Translate
Yeah.
app.
Yeah.
However, I think like you have like Google Flights, and if they can take that data wherever your trip is, and because I think that like just because you don't know about it, that kind
Hmm.
of tells me that this part of Google isn't talking to this part of Google to
Right.
connect the
Yes.
wires. So if they can integrate their current technology with itself,
Hmm.
maybe that's a way that they can tie tie customers over here to over here. And now that
Yeah.
customer that maybe was going to spend, maybe they spend $100 a year, now they're spending $250 a year,
Hmm.
because now they just know that this can do more, and
Yeah.
it satisfies more needs that they realized.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, and this was I was like I was hoping that Google would probably already come up with my idea at this point, but I do want to say that I came up with this idea when I was like 8 years old, and so they stole it from me. But
One thing that I was thinking about as you were talking, James, just like how they can use AI and just all this data in different ways. I feel like one industry that's not being like exploited enough is like the beauty industry with all this technology. And like I love makeup and like I have a lot of friends who like makeup. And once you start getting into like makeup and skincare, you would be shocked to realize like how much you need to educate yourself about like the ingredients and things like that do or don't go together. And so it all starts like from the beginning, like whatever lotion you put on your skin, whatever sunscreen you put on, primer, foundation. If you don't have the right ingredients that like interact well, then your makeup can like get patchy and like start to like break up. And so a lot of people have so many struggles with that. So if there was like better like AI tools or data that'd be like, okay, I can scan these 3 items that I have in my house. Do they go together? Are they going to sit well on my type of skin? And then have like recommendations like, this is the foundation you have right now, but if you bought this foundation, it's a 95% match to your entire skincare routine and your face, like the way that you're oily or dry, and then giving you like some kind of a coupon or discount to Ulta or to Sephora to go buy it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Hmm.
I wanted to mention one thing. I know we only have a few minutes left here. One thing I was struggling with was trying to apply these frameworks. They were definitely in the back of my mind as I was, maybe not the back of my mind, maybe the middle of my mind as I was going through here. But realistically, for me, not realistically, but for me, I was only really able to apply them historically uh, with the information that was there in the case, but trying to apply them going forward, I guess maybe we could use the framework to analyze perhaps one of like James, you mentioned real-time translation from the air, or not the AirPods, the Google, what are they? Google headset
Yeah,
or
Google Buds.
But
yeah, the Google's earpiece deal. So maybe using similar features that they'd used with Sail. So like Sail was one way. It was a very powerful way for them to try and decide whether to continue, pivot, or sync programs, and that kind of fit into the business analytics methodology under how they're going to be defining the goals. That's kind of the purpose of Sail. And then when they moved on, they could move on to something like Voyage Plan, which was something they used to help them define the metrics that they're going to be using. And then once that data is collected, analyzing it in a way such as Anna developed the criteria matrix, and that helped forecast and measure the potential global impact of an opportunity. And then, once it's out there, once they've decided, hey, this looks like it's going to be having a positive impact globally, moving on to that last part of the framework that deals with interpretation, action, and feedback, which is where they talked about using things like a standardized playbook, and then they were using an upsell framework as well that would help identify potential pitfalls early on, and then kind of industry standard using different CRM tools to better understand user experience and whatnot. And then lastly, ensuring that they're incorporating the cross-functional teams when rolling things out, such as marketing. They talked about how that was kind of a connective tissue to ensure that they're kind of going from that real upstream scientific side, making sure that it's really making sense downstream at the vendor or customer level, and catering to those needs. So that is really the only way I feel that I was able to, just look at things that they did and then potentially how they could do that on something like what James mentioned going forward. But if anybody else has anything about the framework, any other ideas on the framework. I didn't get anything on next best offer necessarily. Kind of seems like a different.
I mean, I'll just jump in real quick that I agree with like everything you said, that it was kind of a little difficult to apply the framework, but more in like a theoretical way. And for the future.
Yeah, I can say I was definitely a bit just being totally candid, a little unsure exactly of how we were supposed to fit the frameworks into this. So I'm looking forward to
The discussion.
discussing it more in class
Mhm.
to help clarify that a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely I felt like it was not what I expected from a article content wise for the type of question that was asked. And so I'm also excited to see how everybody else kind of worked through this, how the teams thought through it too.
One thing too is I think all of us sort of felt that way, having a hard time, answering these questions using this framework, and then with the content that was provided in the case,
Mhm.
even being able to answer the questions in general. And I'm wondering if it's because we were so strategy heavy recently that we're trying to use that same mindset to approach this case. So
Mhm.
hopefully we'll be able to get a new way of thinking, about these analytics frameworks.
Mhm.
Agreed. All right, I'm going to close and stop recording. All right. Thank you, everyone. Great
Thanks.
participation.